Hi and thanks for tuning into my channel and welcome, and in this video we're going to be doing a beginner's guide to American Truck Simulator in VR using Steam VR. So let's just jump straight in. Okay, so in the first section of the video we're going to be looking at the graphics driver settings. Now I'm using an NVIDIA graphics card, you may be using an AMD graphics card, or you may be using an Intel Arc GPU, and if that's the case you would need to download the relevant software and try and match the settings that I'm going to show you now to that particular software as well. Down the left hand side of the NVIDIA app, which is available to download from the NVIDIA website, this allows you to customize your graphics card options. There are some tabs just here. One we're interested in today is the graphics setting here. There are two settings or two tabs along the top. One is global, which allows you to essentially change the settings on every application and on every game if it allows. You'll see that there are two values that have been changed within here. One, the power management mode has been set to prefer maximum performance, and then the second one just here, the variable rate super sampling on virtual reality is set to always on. Click back on the left hand side just here on program settings, and if we go into ATS, American Truck Simulator, you'll see there are two values in here. Now it's inviting us to allow the application to auto optimize for us, and we're not going to allow that to happen, and the reason being is because we're going to put some custom settings within here. We're going to essentially push the boundaries of the game as far as possible, and we are going to set and enforce frame rate limits to allow those settings to run. If you look on the left hand side again here, you'll see there are some lines through some of these here, and they indicate that a custom setting has been applied. That custom setting will be in excess of what the system would be able to apply itself. The main one within here, however, is that we're going to pay attention to briefly is the scaling. Now scaling, it allows the game to push the textures and the resolution as far as possible, and even with an RTX 4090 here, you'll see that the optimized value would be 300% and we're pushing it to 400%. And you're probably going to wonder why we've got the resolution of the monitor set to such a low value, and the reason for that is going to push the GPU to do the work rather than the CPU to do the work. So if we set a lower resolution on a external monitor, which will no longer apply anyway because we're using a VR headset, that's how we're going to force that to happen, but we'll show you that when we get to the customized settings section. The one we're interested in for the purposes of the graphics card settings, however, if we scroll down, we're going to set a maximum frame rate enforced on the GPU side of things, and we're going to set that to 60 FPS, and you're probably going to think that's relatively low. You're probably going to think, well, my VR headset can do well in excess of that. However, ATS works on some relatively old architecture. The game is quite old, it runs on DirectX 11. I can assure you, as you will see later on when we get to the video, that running the graphics settings well in excess of what would be the norm and applying a setting of 60 FPS, the game will look fantastic when viewed through your VR headset, and you'll have a really nice smooth experience. And it's also going to alleviate a lot of the undesired effects that you would probably have had if you've tried running the game on high graphical fidelity already, and you probably had some undesirable effects such as rubber banding, where you're driving along and the motion of the vehicle is almost like moving back and forth, slowing down, speeding up, and also then you probably had artifacts in as well where you're looking left and right and you've got a lot of jaggedness going on, and sometimes even potentially game crashes and disconnects from Steam VR. So to apply a maximum frame rate setting on a custom value, we're going to select on, and you can either do it by moving the slider for left and right, just here, or you can actually just click on here and you can actually set the custom value and then click on apply. And once that's clicked on and applied, you can see that we have a value here of 60 FPS set as a hard limit. Now, as said, on the global setting side of things, we've set prefer maximum performance already, and if you click on there, you'll see it's already set at that. It's going to do no harm, just hard enforcing that in there as well. if you haven't already done that in global settings. So they're the only two values we need to set within this section. I'm going to move on to the next now. Okay, so in the next section we're going to show you how to enable the VR format. As said, American Truck Simulator doesn't natively appear in VR and it's not a native VR game. So there are a couple of beta participations that we need to allow in which to download the configuration files to make it work in Steam VR. So we are in the Steam environment just here, and if we click on Library at the top and we click on American Truck Simulator, which is already here, you can see that the selected beta running is Oculus. I already have it enabled here, but I'm just going to show you how to enable that before we begin. If we go into the Manage icon at the top right hand corner here, and then we click on Properties, it opens a new window, and within that window we're going to go to the Beta tab, and the Beta Participation window will appear just on the top right hand corner here. Now for you, if you don't have VR enabled already, that will be generically set as none. There are some various different versions in here. I was running 1.49 for some time because I had issues where I had a game profile with lots of progress within it. I had issues when I tried to upgrade to 1.50 initially, and I was running a lot of mods. I got a bit carried away with mods, to be quite honest with you, and I had over 100 installed. Actually ended up removing all those modifications and starting again, and then I work on the premise that less is more, having found the best modifications to use. And I'll certainly recommend that route for you as well. So if we go on to the current version, which is probably the one you'll be using as of the time of this video, which is 1.50, what will then happen is it will then download the selected beta version, and this will then change to Oculus in the little box just here. The second thing we need to do is we need to set the actual selected variation. So we've gone to General, and then we need to enter within here. If you select in Oculus, be wary of, even if you have a Quest 3, Quest 2, I use a Quest Pro, and the reason I like to use that is it has some enhanced features and it's a great VR headset to use for PC, such as eye tracking, which allows foveated rendering, etc. through OpenXR. However, if you want to type Oculus, if you were to do that, as said, it will then also open the Oculus application which runs in the background, which can cause conflicts with Steam VR. So even if you are using a Quest headset, I would still recommend using OpenVR as the actual toolkit to use when running in Steam VR, which is actually natively OpenVR anyway. The other tabs down here, as said, we are going to look at how to install workshop modifications, but one just worthy of mention is DLC. So we're going to close this for a moment and actually have a look at the DLC that's available. SCS is a company that make American Truck Simulator, started dabbling in their own little accessories and modifications within the game, and these are actually really good. Not too much in terms of price to buy anyway. You can see at the moment this particular one is £3.39, but in the Steam sale you can pick them up for £1, just over £1 I think I paid for these ones. And actually another good time to grab the map packs as well, because you are going to need those or want those as you progress through the game. You can see that they're a little bit more expensive, around £10, but as said, the best way of actually obtaining those really is in the Steam sales, and you tend to find them around 50% off. It's a really good time to get them. So going back onto the tab again, go to Manage and Properties, we can see that if we click on Workshop, it shows that the current modifications we have installed are here, and I said I was running over 100 at one time. We now have 26. I've just actually downloaded this one to show you how we actually apply one in the game. And the aim of this video actually really is to give you a VR experience where you have a real good real-to-life experience. In other words, the fictional aspect of a game is gone. If you were to do a delivery using one of the companies in the game, it would be, for example, Joe Blogs & Co. We want to change that and make it a real-world company. So you're making a delivery for someone like Amazon or Coca-Cola. The delivery of the vehicles would change, the company banners would change, and everything you see around you, be it advertising signs or be it in sort of shops, etc., will change to real-world locations such as KFC, McDonald's, etc., as opposed to Billy Blogs, or whoever it would be in the fictional environment. I've actually set two environments to show you at the end of the video. One is actually unmodified and one is modified. and obviously you'll see the difference between the two variations as a modded and a modded game. One thing I will say is I'm going to show you how to download the actual modifications next, and we're going to do that through the actual Steam environment. There's two ways of actually downloading modifications. One is externally, so you can actually look at the websites that, if you do a quick Google search and search American Truck Simulator or Euro Truck Simulator modifications, there are various websites out there where they are hosting modifications, you know, and very talented people are making these mods, and they're absolutely fantastic. And I've seen some videos where, you know, they look very inviting to obtain. Fine if you're obviously doing your homework and you're downloading them from a genuine website. Just be wary of some websites out there that are obviously hosting modifications that you think are the modifications you're searching for. You may download malware and put it into the mod folder on your ATS game. As soon as you launch the game, obviously it would then launch that malware with it. At the very least, it may cause the game to corrupt. At the very worst, it may cause obviously problems with your machine, which obviously may then cause ultimately major PC issues. Not to sound like the purveyor of doom and gloom, but SCS do give a warning obviously as well to be effective using non-verified modifications. I've tended to find that within Workshop itself you don't have any issues, so as I said, if you stick within the Steam environment you are pretty safe in terms of starting off, and as I said, if you do become more advanced and want to apply and research those other modifications at a later stage, then it's maybe something you might want to do. One thing I'll say, however, when you do download any modification, if you actually go onto the Show Advanced Options, come back here and then click on Find Best Load Order, what that will then do is it will then put the modification into the most optimized location within the game, and you would naturally think that the highest sized modification would fit at the top, but it doesn't quite work like that. So as an example, this Rail Company's Gas Stations and Billboard, which essentially does what I've just talked about, changing the fictional environment into a real environment, is actually just over half a gigabyte in size. And if we scroll down, for example, and find the Realistic Brutal Graphics and Weather, which is another fantastic mod, that one's just over 4.5 gig in size, so it doesn't work in the way that you would anticipate it does. So as said, when you have downloaded the mod, just make sure you just revisit that tab, Properties, Workshop, Advanced Options, and then click on Find Best Load Order every time. And if you don't, then what can happen is as the game is loading, it causes it to crash, and you may wonder why. So as I said, that's one of the areas we would look at as well. And I'll just also show you just something very quickly as well. If you click on Properties, and if you go into Install Files, if you're having any issues with your game and you need to verify the integrity of the game, what's installed on there, if you have a number of mods you've just installed, for example, and you're experiencing crashes, come back to this section here, and if you click on Verify Integrity of the installed files, what will happen, you can see a little moving bar along the bottom here. It will actually verify all the files that are installed and ensure that they are in the correct locations and ensure that they are in the right order essentially. So when you launch the game, it will launch smoother and faster. And as I said, every now and again it might just be worth just carrying out that quick validation process. You can see it's validating just here. It doesn't take too long, but it's something worth mentioning. It's something certainly worth carrying out if you're experiencing any problems. And many people comment with regards to ATS and ETS that the game crashes consistently, and you know, people get quite fed up with it really. And you have to remember obviously that the game is quite old now. We are adding extra layers onto the game architecture and the game engine. Obviously SCS are carrying out a lot of modifications at the moment, and they are doing their own updates. And obviously making essentially things a little bit more current. We're still on DirectX 11, DirectX 12 is used in most games nowadays, and it will get to a point obviously where a lot of these modifications will probably require renewal, but at the moment we just need to make sure we do a little bit of nursery surrounding the installed files and make sure we carry out the maintenance to make sure things are working correctly every now and again if we're having any problems. So we're going to close this menu for now, and we're going to go onto the Workshop tab. So back into the Steam environment, you've got some various tabs along the top. DLC is where you would obtain the game maps. If you purchase them direct from SCS, a good time to obtain those would be during Steam sales. Some of them, just click on here briefly, you can see that the map price is around £10. I have every map installed on here, but most of the maps and things and the actual SCS modifications, because they've even started doing their own now, There is a price attached to all of them, obviously, but during Steam sales you can get these around 50% off. You know, some of them are free, which is quite nice, but as I said, most of them are paid content. So if we go into the workshop tab, which is just along the row here, and we click on there, it will open a new window. Now this is where the modifications are obtained from for the game. So what we're going to do is show you a couple of ways to avoid downloading things that aren't going to work. Do a little bit of homework for every modification you pick up. One of the errors that I made initially when starting to play the game in VR is I went on a bit of a smash and grab approach to mods and had over 100 installed, and it caused all sorts of problems. You know, for example, there's no point downloading two mods of a similar type because one's going to essentially counteract the other, and it may cause you problems. So as a good indicator, most popular and most subscribed are two ones to look at first. You can see there's just under 11,000 modifications in total, so it's quite overwhelming if you look at this workshop initially. But you can't really go wrong if you obviously look at what everybody else is using as a matter of course. And you can see actually as an example on here, there's a couple on here that I already have, which are quite nice. But I'm just going to choose one actually because I've just seen this one that was quite interesting. So this is one that is obviously fairly new. You can see obviously it's just been posted on the 5th of August, but it's already got relatively high ratings. So in order to install this, it's just basically a vehicle that sits within your traffic like the rest of it. So it adds almost that real world and real life environment. You know, but I quite like things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to essentially subscribe to this, and this is how we download modifications. But in order to support what I was just saying about doing your homework, it's a relatively new one, so there's not much information about it at the moment. It's got quite high ratings. Just scroll through the comments and just check for any incompatibilities, and just see what people say about it, which is the easiest thing. So people obviously believe in this as a truck. You can actually use a modification to drive around, but it's just one that sits in traffic and just adds to almost like the real world environments, which is what I like. Someone's already just confirmed that there, it's just a truck, nothing else, and it just appears near traffic. So to show you how to download and install a mod, I'm just going to subscribe to that, and it's as simple as that. Once the mod's subscribed to, if we then click on library and we click on downloads, you'll see that that has now appeared in workshop content, and it will actually install into the mod folder within the game itself. So if we go back onto the workshop again, and then we go back onto there, you can see it now has a tick saying subscribed, so that's now added to the modifications folder. So going back onto the most subscribed folder as an example, I'm just going to look for things on here that may give an indication as to ones to avoid. There's one here and someone's just put final in there. Now that may mean that it's something that's recently been updated. It's quite highly rated, and I think I've had this one before, to be quite honest, but I'm just going to click on it and have a look. So I'm not subscribed to it anymore, which indicates to me that it does ring a bell, but it indicates to me that obviously I've had it before and it's caused some kind of problem. So if we just scroll through, first thing I look at is as I said, the ratings. But the first red flag we've got on here is that it last updated in 2020, which indicates it's quite an old modification. It looks nice in terms of textures. It looks like it's going to add something to the game, something that's certainly be interesting for real world or realism. But if we look down, and this is what I would recommend you do each time, check the reviews, check the date last updated, and then scroll down and have a look through the comments. So you can see here somebody's put, straight away, it should be updated to 1.50. So we're running 1.50, so we know it's going to be a problem, basically, so we should avoid it. And someone has just reinforced that by putting underneath this mod is dead.install, and these are two relatively recent comments, over a month old. And actually someone's just put, just having a glance at this underneath, the author has just put, I've changed my status of this and all my other texture mods to fine, as I'm not intending on making any more mod updates. I mean, you've got to understand that the people who are doing this in their own time and dedicating a lot of effort into them, and I really do respect and appreciate, these people who do this. It adds a lot to the game, and there's no charge for these, obviously, as well. These are free modifications that people are obviously investing their time into doing, obviously much like many YouTube videos as well. On that basis, a like and subscribe would be very nice and appreciated if it helps you today. We'll obviously slip that in there. But as said, in the same fashion, these people are obviously investing a lot of time and effort into what they're doing for us. So once we've subscribed to the modifications we want, that's pretty much it within here. As I said, if we click on this tab just here to show all mods, you can see some of these top ones I've already subscribed to, but it's really overwhelming. I would actually also just mention to you that it's worth avoiding some of these in the respect that the vehicle ones in particular, and when I say vehicle ones, I'm talking about actually the skins, for various different cabs, etc. They tend to break when the modification updates. So this one looks not too bad. Obviously, it was recently updated and it looks quite nice. But as I said, just be wary of some of the vehicle modifications you download, because when they do update it, and bear in mind it will not be too long before we get onto 1.51, the last thing you want to do is start obviously wading through modifications and removing any incompatibilities. If you have us assigned to your vehicles, then there is an issue then where you would then have to go through your fleet and sell the vehicle and potentially replace the vehicle. So once again, there's something just to be wary of. Okay, so that's essentially how we change the game format to VR, and it's how we change the formats to the relevant plugin that you require, so Oculus, VR, or OpenXR, and that's how we install modifications through a workshop. So we're now going to move on to the game configuration file. We're going to have a look through there and show you how we actually apply custom settings. Okay, so in this section we're going to be looking at the actual configuration file of ACS, and this is essentially where the magic happens really in terms of changing the generic in-game settings and making them customized. So from File Explorer, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Documents folder, we're going to open ATS, American Truck Simulator, and then we're going to open the configuration file. Now I already have it open in the background here because I've got multi-monitors open at the moment for recording in OBS. But one thing I would recommend doing as well, you can see I have a folder that I've created up here called Backup. Now I would recommend before you begin to copy and create and then paste it into a new folder, to rename it Backup of ACS or whatever you want to call it, and then rename it to _backup. And if we do have any issues where we end up causing configuration changes where it causes you problems, then you can simply just rename that to config, and you can paste it over the original configuration file within the documents folder itself. Now I'm going to minimize that just for now, and we're going to look at the actual configuration file. And this may look quite overwhelming initially, so once you've change the parameters to OpenXR and set the VR element within Steam, as you saw in the last section, this will create a configuration file based upon that. Now Prism 3D is the variation for VR. You can see obviously that it's also got the various OpenXR elements in here as well. There's a few elements we need to change in here. So first of all, we're going to look at buffer now. To make things easy, if we press Ctrl and F and then we just type in buffer, and then we need to then click on next and then keep clicking until the first one we come across is buffer scale. So the buffer scale as standard will be set to 1.0, and we're going to change that to 1.3. Now this is where there's an element of what your game can essentially run at. So as I said, running an RTX 4090 with an Intel 14th gen i9 processor is obviously pretty much a high-end system here. However, because we've limited the frame rate, it should run pretty well on most systems out there, or most recent systems. So as a nice scale, we set that at 1.3, and that will change the parameters in the game to make it look much nicer. I'm not going to go into too much detail with regards to all of these, but as a golden rule, really, 1 is pretty much slow, 2 is medium, 3 is high, and 4 or anything above that, it becomes ultra. So just going to scroll and just explain a couple of these to you. And as I said, we've already mentioned before that the game is running in DirectX 11. which is pretty much the generic standard that ATS operates on at the moment. And you'll see that there's a number of variables in here that can be amended. Now, the custom settings that I've already highlighted within the game relate to particularly lighting more than anything, and resolution. So a couple of others obviously we're just going to concentrate on here. We're going to look at the ones that we can obviously amend in terms of lighting and scale. So there's one in here that calls light span factor. Now this is generically set at 2. Change that to 3, which then becomes a custom setting, and then light distance factor as well. Now those two relate primarily to street lights and reflections. So as said, by amending those in here to that format, it changes the variables and it basically makes them appear as brighter street lights and wider street lights, and you'll notice a big difference obviously when driving on a night time during the game at those. In terms of buffer again, so if we control F to find and we search buffer. Now the buffer page size is another one obviously we need to look at. So this mentioned about the buffer and the game buffer, and this is essentially how it's loading data into the game. The buffer page size is set as standard at 10. I've got it to 40 here. Many recommend setting it to 20, but I find 40 works really well for me. And essentially that's just how fast the game buffer is loading information into the game to essentially smooth how the game runs. But as said, that will generically depend upon your system more than anything else. Now another one to mention as well that's quite annoying when you launch the game in 1.5 for the first time, you'll find that the actual UI or the main menu will appear to be basically looking downwards and outstretched on an angle. And how we amend that is we change a couple of variables in here as well. So we change the manual stereo UI _y to 0. I think it's set at 0.5 as a standard, and then we change the UI _x, so these two variables here, to 0 as well. So what that basically does is it basically makes the main menu appear directly in front of you, and as said, it just makes it a lot easier to navigate around the UI screen. So initially we're just going to change those values, and as I said, there's a lot of other things you can see in here that you can play around with. You know, the rain reflection scale as well, if you want that set to high. Once again, change that variable in there. I've also changed the density of vegetation as well, so I've set that to 3 and 3 in here. I said I think it's generically set to 2. So once again, it depends on how much you want to play around with that. As standard, I would recommend just changing the ones I just mentioned. Texture detail once again will depend obviously on the system resource, so once again I've changed that to a value outside of the norm, which is 3. So I said if you do want to change those, then obviously you could do. The FPS limit, and you'll see how we've set that within game. So once we get into a game in a moment, obviously you'll see that there's a way that you can actually dictate that within the actual settings menu itself. So some of these configurations are actually determined by what you set within the game itself. And we mentioned obviously about the fact of what we're setting the actual screen output as. The screen output was actually set during the game as well. So as I said, I mentioned about setting it to the lowest scale possible, and that's these variables here, and they were set within the game. As I said, because when you're playing in VR, you will see on your main monitor an image of what's going on in game. Now that will appear as 2 images, as a left and right eye image. So obviously if you did have somebody watching what was going on, you know, it wouldn't look great for them anyway. It's really irrelevant. You're just essentially using your graphics card to reproject his image onto the main screen that's of no real relevance. In case you're wondering, obviously any -1s in here essentially mean that there is a custom value that's been set within the game, so the configuration file will set things to a -1, and you'll see obviously that there are various -1s set around various different places here. So that's essentially turning values off, or it means that there's a custom value being set. So as said, there are some options that you can play around with a little bit here. I've actually found that these are the options that work best for me, but for the purposes of yourself, in terms of generic settings, try those first, and as I said, feel free to also play around with those. Remember, you have a backup that you've created anyway, so if things do go wrong, you can always revisit that, and you can also make various changes within that as well. Just mention obviously as well, we were saying about the super sampling options. Super sampling is determined within game now, and we'll show you those options when we get into the actual advanced graphics menus, because we're going to have a look at those before we begin as well, once we enter the game. So the next section we're going to see now is going to look at the actual game itself. And we're going to obviously look at the game running in a non-modded environment, and then we're going to be looking at the game set in a modified environment. Okay, so we are now in the American Truck Simulator main menu, and as you can see, there is a profile at the top. This is my profile that I've been running for some time, and as you can see, there's 23 mods in use on that one, but we'll look at that in a moment. I'm just going to show you first of all how the game runs in standard form. So I've created a new profile, and we have 0 mods in use. The mod manager, however, just to show you briefly, is just here. And you can see these are the modifications. That's the one I grabbed from the store earlier on. Showed you how we do that. And you can see that no active mods are in use just here. So we'll come on to that in a moment and show you how that works. So what we're going to look at first of all is the options and the graphical settings. So as I mentioned to you, the display here should be set to a minimum. I've got it set to this resolution just for the sake of video capture at the moment. The refresh rate was set to 59 Hz, and as said, we have enforced the FPS limits in the game and also in the background as well to match the graphic card settings. Scaling is set at 400%, which is the maximum. As said, you know, if we were to use the NVIDIA control panel, it wouldn't allow you to go that high when it was auto-optimize. And then we have the SMAA and TAA anti-aliasing options set to the maximum permitted. I've set it to always sharp because it looks very nice in game, but there are some other options available in there. All the other settings are custom, or what we set. As said, we've set some vegetation and grass density options just in here. So even though we're looking at an unmodified game, it will look quite nice out of the box when we go into that in a moment. So we're going to continue game. This is a game I did start earlier on. I said to set a new profile up just so we can demonstrate to you what an unmodified game looks like. As you can see, just in the main menu here, the reflection's very nice on the truck. It doesn't obviously look as nice when video captured as it looks through a VR headset, but I can assure you that everything looks absolutely fantastic and really, really smooth. If we go on to drive, it'll go flat screen again just for a moment for you guys. And as you can see, we've got the truck on the highway here. Just look at the sky above us. Looks really, really nice. We've got graphics options on high. As you can see here, if I just zoom around the truck, the reflections are really, really nice. Let's switch the headlights on.
Okay, here we go.
You can see everything's really, really nice again. I haven't got the buttons mapped on my Moser R5 for this profile, so I can't adjust many of the settings for the truck itself. But yeah, this is the generic game. So if you were to play it using the graphical settings that we put in to make custom settings in the game so far, you'd be pretty happy with that. But as you can see, the vehicle's going past are all unbranded. The signs as we carry on in a moment will be generic. Inside the vehicle, everything looks fantastic. Just going to build up a bit of speed on here, and then we're just going to merge onto join the I'm going to say motorway for a moment, the freeway, as we say in America, and everything is absolutely smooth. Just looking at the vehicles going past what I mentioned about fictional names, etc. There's hardly any branding to the vehicles, and they're all pretty much generic. So I'll just put the lights on there. Just get this view of a little high beam at the moment. So light the road a little bit. So yeah, everything's running silky smooth as expected, no issues. may look different, as said in the
Go straight on.
rumble you can hear is just me going slightly off road there. I've got the next level racing Atlantic seat and the Rosa R5, which gives some force feedback as well, so it makes it a lot more realistic. But yeah, no complaints here whatsoever. Everything's looking great, very nice. See what I'm saying about the gas companies. So we've got one there called Gallon Oil that would appear in the game on a modified basis as Shell or Esso or Exxon. So yeah, no problems. Everything
Go straight on.
really good, and I'm pretty sure that it will work really well for you. So I'm just going to abandon this game now, and we're going to move on to show you the game in the modified format. Okay, so we're back again in the second and final part of the in-truck video, and on this one what we're going to select now is the modified game. Now, as mentioned, we downloaded a couple of modifications during the earlier sessions in the video. So what we're going to show you is how we actually apply those modifications to the actual game itself. So we selected the historic profile, in other words a profile with the whole game history on there. Not only does it carry the modifications, obviously there's a lot of other content within that to have a look at. But if we go into Mod Manager first of all, the graphics settings obviously remain exactly the same as I showed you on the first half of the in-game experience. And what we're going to look at here is all of the ones that are highlighted here appear on the right hand side. If you have a quick scan up and down each time you do go into Mod Manager, any that are flagged with a red dot are now incompatible with current version. So it's always a good idea just to remove those. And as mentioned as well, the graphical ones as well, you need to just check that you haven't got any conflicting graphical modifications in here. So we chose a couple of nice ones that would be quite interested to see what they do. So the first one is this one, which simply just adds this vehicle into our traffic. I'm going to just simply select it, then turn this to active rather than inactive, and that will add to the active mods on the right hand side. And then again, the screen information projection mod, I'm just going to select that one. Now in terms of load order, I've already selected best load order prior to starting this final part of the video off. I did actually apply those mods and didn't practice what I preached in terms of going into the Steam section and applying best load order in there, but that's already been done. So we're just going to confirm changes, and then we are going to just simply continue on game. Now, as said, there's no variance in the graphical settings on this one here. It's exactly the same as the generic standard one I just showed you there. So you'll see the difference between a modified game and an unmodified game, but the graphical settings essentially remain the same. The only thing that is going to be different is the graphics going to be slightly different because we have modifications in there which essentially bring the world up to a much more current value. So I'm just going to continue game. Now this is signed into World of Trucks, whereas the other one isn't. So World of Trucks is basically where you can actually do everything from doing jobs that will be essentially recorded, but also you can actually go into convoys and enter drives with other people from around the world. Something I haven't ventured into yet, but something that is quite interesting. Now you can see in the background, this is the truck that essentially I've modified and built up. The graphical settings, once again, the reflections are really, really nice. You can already see, even just from within this menu here, but everything looks really good. And as said, that is just largely due to configuration changes, but also due to the FPS limits that we've enforced in the game as well. So I'm just going to, I can't remember where I actually ended up on the last time I played this, but we'll soon see. So we should be back in a garage of some description. So as you can see, we're here. This is essentially the top tier truck of the game, but just looking around, just going to show you the fidelity first of all, and you can see that the reflections, the detail, everything is absolutely stunning really. And if you look into the distance there, and if you can see that you've got Walmart, so it's the first indication of some of the branded type businesses that that happen as a result of modification. Now, what I also do have enabled, as said, is the foveated rendering. Now, I was going to look at the truck over there in the distance, and it's crystal clear. I'm not too sure if this will show up on the OBS video, but if I look away, hopefully it picks up my eye tracking, and I look back on that, and everywhere where I look is really pin sharp. Everywhere when I look away from those and it follows my eye tracking, you should see that things that I'm not looking at, although you won't know exactly where I am looking, should blur out a little bit. And as I said, this is a really nice, and you should notice that actually if I look at the steering wheel here, so what's in my peripheral vision, which will be the head-up display just here on the right hand side, if I look at the SCI logo in the middle, look back at that, and then look back at the SCI video. I'm not too sure, I said, if that will show up within the OBS capture, but it's really a great benefit of having a headset like the Quest Pro, or a headset with eye tracking. I'm not too sure if we're going to implement this with the PSVR 2, which has just come across to PC VR, but it would certainly be nice if it was a feature that they enabled within that as well as part of the Open VR. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start the vehicle up. I'm just going to have a little drive around. As there's no cargo attached to the back of it, just back in the garage basically. Now, one of the things you'll see is, one of the modifications I've applied is you'll see these patches on the floor. In the normal game, although I didn't get to show you that, you'll see there's essentially like a 3D spinning icon indicating where things are. This adds a lot more immersion to the game because it just essentially makes things a little bit more realistic. So just coming out onto the road, once again absolutely silky smooth. I'm just also just going to put the window down slightly just on my left. If I open the window, you'll hear that the sound fixes. You can hear that, you can even hear the insects outside. If I look out without banging my head into the microphone, as I have a VR headset on there, if I just look around, and you can see that the fidelity is absolutely fantastic. So, as an example of a couple of the modifications you can do, in non-modified truck, you know, you've got the Midge mug on there. That's the JCB bag on there. So, on our right hand side, got the wall mats definitely there. We could pull in there, we could essentially be up for the job. And how the game works is you can essentially go into the main menu and you can select the option to pick a job up, travel around the map, and you can essentially go to destinations it's giving, or you can just pull into places like Walmart or etc. So I'm just going to put my foot down a little bit now, just to show you how smooth everything is. And as I said, it probably looks a little bit janky in terms of the game capture, but I'm going to show you that it's really, really smooth and there's absolutely no issues in terms of what modifications can be applied. The 1 second response time as a result of dropping the modification as well on Steam VR has come down tremendously. As I said, you may find that you may have quite a lot of latency if you're trying to run a high FPS rate. There's a Holiday in there, another well-known scenic mark on the map. So yeah, very, very nice, looks fantastic. The fidelity is great, and as I said, this is what Truck Simulator is all about, you know, out of the box. If you play it just as it comes provided from Steam, it's a great game, you know, and you'll have a lot of fun with it, but if you want to make it real world and change the environments and make it much more realistic, then this is the way to go. And as I said, one of the things that I really enjoy with Truck Simulator is as well is just actually just putting the radio on, having a listen to some tunes, and then really just finishing work and coming and just relaxing really with it and doing a couple of jobs. So it's one of those nice games. I will be covering in other videos, videos such as iRacing, which I'm also playing in VR. Also listen to Assetto Corsa and Assetto Corsa Competizione. So what I was saying just about a couple of modifications, I'm just going to highlight a couple here. So the billboards modification and the changing the real life shell, sorry, the garages, etc., from the fabricated fictional ones to brands that we know such as Shell, Exxon, etc. You can see there, it looks absolutely fantastic. And also the flags modification as well, just gives the flags a real essence about them as opposed to just being very static and very cardboard, which would be modified world. So very talented people behind the mods. It adds a lot to the game. It really does make the game, in my opinion. As you can see, it was fantastic. Everything in the distance was great. It was very good. Now the weather textures modification looks fantastic as well. What I was saying about the billboards and signs modification, you can see an example there. We've got Shell and Subway on there. And another interesting thing about those modifications as well is that they actually do update on a regular basis. So one thing I've seen in the game quite a lot recently is Boats 2024. If we just look to our left here, you can see this is one of the add-on modified vehicles that come in vehicle packs, and you can see the level of detail just on the sticker there, that caution do not block door. It's really the crosses that appear within certain boundaries within the game. There is a modification as well for remove those as well, so you can actually have an untethered game experience. Just looking at the police cruiser as well, just going past there. You know, the level of detail, you can even read the registration plate on there. People look inside there, you can see the drivers and everything. The graphical fidelity is very good for a game of the age. So, I'm just going to try and pull up next to the back of this police vehicle just here, and as I said, you can see it's really, really nice. Nice reflections. So the overall aim of improving the overall experience, and you can go right on a red light in the US, because although we can't go right at all there. So a little bit stuck here, and turn left. By going for a red light, I would receive a traffic penalty if I had the option in there one in the game. I said I'm having a little drive round just to show you essentially how the modified game works. And I said it's running really well. And by enforcing those limits in the system, make your game much more playable, much more enjoyable. You can see over there, there's another advert for Amazon on the billboard just in the distance. An advert for Lost River as well. It's really nice to win 70 million this Saturday. So yeah, really good. Fantastic. Any questions or help? Sure, feel free to leave questions in the comments. So if you've enjoyed the video today, it'd be very nice if you leave a like and subscribe. As I said, I am new to YouTube, but we'll be adding some more videos on just to help people in the VR world, because as I said, getting some of the games to run can be very tricky. As I found through experience, and it's nice, I find, just to share the experience with people as to how we get these things working well. So until next time, thank you very much and enjoy. We'll see you soon.